Before we get started, I find it a little ironic that our last episode was called Work-Life Balance, and here we are recording at 5 in the morning because there's no other time to do it.
It's called balance. Gotta get work in. Gotta get life in.
That's right.
Gotta get this in. Yeah, so I guess that was a roundabout way of you saying good morning to me.
Yeah.
Happy to see me.
Yeah, I was not saying good morning at 4:30 or 4:15 when my alarm went off, but such is life, my friend.
Yeah.
My brother sent me a question that I thought would be a good one to kind of go over. More on like, if someone wanted to get into this job, maybe what the best route would be. Do you want to read that?
You said, I think it would be good to hear an episode of Opposite Advice on how to plan a career in the fire service. What are the best ways to go about finding your path so you can have a rough plan of what type of department might best fit you? Should you pick one academy over another? What certification should you go after first? How soon should you try to promote? And can some decisions really stall your progression? Those are all actually really good questions.
He's a very smart man. So how did
Where did you go wrong?
Oh, well, scientists and doctors have been wondering the same thing for many years. I think for me, it was like, when you get into the fire service, you just want to get on a department.
Yeah.
And then it's like...
And I don't think that's changed.
No.
I really don't think there's a way of shopping fire departments and finding the best fit. Like, you just have to, in your case, you've gone through the 3, right? You're in your third.
Fifth.
Not for fit reasons, just more how you want to live your life, where you want to live.
It was more of a progression of like volunteer to paid on call to part-time to full-time to, so I've worked for a lot of places, and yeah, you don't really have the option of like who has the best culture and all this. It's more of just who's hiring.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm on the other end of the spectrum where I've got one.
Yeah.
It's the only one I've ever worked for. And I could say that at times it's been the best fit, and at other times it's not. So, you could get hired by your ideal and perfect department and things could change.
Yeah.
Or you could think it's a mistake and then all of a sudden things change for the better, Yeah,
I mean, I think you need to look at what you want in a department, right? If you hate the medical stuff and you want to avoid it at all costs, then you might go to a department that doesn't have paramedics. Or if you love it, maybe you want to make sure that they do their own transport. Or, hey, who has the best EMS system in the country? I think it's Seattle, right? Isn't that their...
I think they have a good model, right?
Right.
I mean, I would say now that so if you want to be a firefighter, you've got to find a place that has some sort of mitigation plan for the inordinate amount of medical calls that aren't medical calls, right?
Right.
I've been calling them just community. I mean, it's like we're community medicine.
But honestly, in the beginning of your career, you don't really care. You just want to be on the truck, man.
Right. But I guess this is advice for
people
that 10, 15, 20 years down the road, it probably will be something you'll be concerned with, is a department that has some sort of plan. And so back to Seattle, from what we've heard, right, they have cars that just run these basic calls. Nothing goes ALS. They don't go out on anything that's not ALS,
Right.
And I think that's a great model, right? That's what the citizens pay for, right? They pay for emergency response. They pay for 911.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, do you want, kind of like when you're picking schools, do you want to go to a big school? Do you want to go to a small school? Do you want to go to a department where you know everybody, or it's so big, like those, I know for me, I always wanted to work for Chicago, but, so this is a good story. So they had a hiring freeze for a really long time. And I was the first test after their big hiring freeze. And they filled up McCormick Place, which is like, imagine Denver Convention Center times 2. It's massive, man. And they filled it up 2 days in a row. And the person I'm sitting next to is in a wheelchair. No bullshit, in a wheelchair, taking this test next to me. And then the person to my other side is in arms like in a sling. It looks like it's completely deformed. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? But all these people are like, I've been waiting for however long to take this test. And then if you pass the test, they took like the last four of your social security number and just put you on a list. There was no like ranking system. But you'd have people who, that list is good for, so many years that 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, they're at another job, another career, and then Chicago calls up. It's like, hey, you ready? And now you have to make this decision. But
yeah, I mean, I think one thing is you just got to start. You just got to pick some spots
But where do you want to live? Like, I know everyone wants to be.
That's part of it. Right?
Yeah.
So that was probably how I ended up where I grew up not far from where I live and work now, but I mean, coming out of college, it was like one of three different places, and we visited, and there was a conversation of, hey, I want to do firefighting, but I don't want to do it here. So I think that's, but yeah, I mean, it's different in different places, So when I was introduced to the fire service, I was introduced in a different like state in the country than where I'm at now, and I feel like the culture was way different. Maybe I was wrong. I don't know. Maybe I just got a little kind of preview of it that's not accurate, but I really did feel like this isn't what it was like down there. You know? I think there's some truth to that everywhere. It's probably department dependent too. It's not really maybe geographic as much as it is just like the leadership in a certain place, You
think it's important to have a job prior to getting into the fire service? Like, do you think that makes you a better firefighter or a better coworker?
I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a job as much as it is life experience, which part of life experience is having jobs, right? But some people can have really good life experience. I mean, some of the best guys we have, joined the military, some branch of the military, as soon as they could, and then they went straight from that.
That might be the best primer. I mean, it seems like
probably
top performers come out of the military for sure.
You gotta have some team.
Oh, so maybe sports too. That could be something.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said like one of the best places to recruit would be like a college campus, right?
Yeah.
Go to those college coaches. I mean, I know a lot of them, and luckily I found a path when that door closed on me. But a lot of people, when they're finished playing college sports, I mean, that's something, that's kind of all they know.
Yeah, the team environment.
Team environment. They've dedicated a decade or more of their life to getting to where they're at with no like guarantee on return, right? Mm-hmm. They just keep working, and I mean, you're playing a college sport. That's probably like that's something to say,
Do you know like is there a certain grade where you're like, all right, I'm not gonna make it to the pros, or do people get in their freshman year and they're like, I got 3 more years of playing and then I'm done?
I've seen some. I mean, it starts as early as high school where you have some talented kids and they're like, I'm not playing college ball. And I've seen some of those kids go, they miss it and then they go play, or you've got kids that when they're 12 years old, they're like, yeah, a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm going to go pro. And that's great. Dangle that carrot out. I mean, you want kids to dream, but some kids will say college too, like after I'm going to go play college, but I'm going to get my degree and then I'm going on to grad school to be a lawyer or doctor. Like that's my plan.
Yeah. That happened with my wife. Like she got in that Olympic development program, and then burned out, and she's like, oh, I'm not doing this in college. Like it was just like too much.
Did she regret it later?
I don't know if she regretted it. I think she really like valued her college experience, and where she went to school had like high level club teams, and so she's played her entire life, but she's like, I'm toast.
Yeah, I mean, see, I attribute my experience in college to being able to play a sport. Like that was what made it for me. So I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's the same with fire departments. I mean, going back to what like talking about recruiting college campuses. I mean, that would be your ideal candidate. I mean, if you were a fire department looking for, to me, that would be the number one place I'd go.
Yeah.
I'd go to college campuses and I look at college athletes, one, because this is an athletic job. They're probably physically prepared to an extent.
Right.
There's a good base there. They're educated.
Are they? Here's my question.
Here we go.
Hold on. Here's my question. I feel like, and maybe it was just from like Big Ten schools, where when the football players would come into class once a month and like sit there.
Well, hey, wait.
They'd have
what class were you taking?
Let's not worry about the classes I was taking.
Because maybe you only need to be there once a month, but you needed to be
I had every day.
The football player who's a 2.0.
Like, hold on. So the circle's blue? No, but they'd have like basically another student there to like help them along in all their stuff. I don't know. I don't think.
Did you, when you've taken promotional tests, did you get a tutor?
Yeah, I did get a tutor.
Then there you go.
All right. I'm an asshole.
They know how to be a part of a team.
Yeah, no, I know.
And the last part is it's probably a diverse like group, right?
Right, which is what we want.
Yeah, so
athletic team players, right? Like that's teachable.
Yeah, I mean, man, that's one thing about sports is by and large, you don't give a shit who you're playing with, you just want to win.
Right.
Right? And I think the majority, I'd like to say almost every fireman, they don't give a shit who they work with. They just want to be good.
They want to win.
They want to win.
Yeah. I mean,
they want to be surrounded by, that's the biggest. They want to be surrounded by other people that they know can do the job, that got their back, right?
Yeah, I'd say that the people that I want to work with the most are either athletes or former military. Probably for those reasons, right? They don't really care who they're with. They just want to win.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that testing process? Or, I mean, man, we should probably ask someone who's tested sooner than we have, but I assume that it's the same. Like that testing process of, at least, when we got on, it was you have 1,000 people testing for a handful of spots.
I hear that's not necessarily valid anymore. I'm sure there's some places.
Yeah. But that is a demoralizing time where you go to these tests, you see the same guys there, and they're like, hey, whose applications are coming open and how many spots are they taking? And, you basically sit down and take a written test that's very similar to a school test, right? Like you have math sections and verbal, and, I know that fire team is another one that is a little bit different, but it all kind of has the same basic. Did you do
I can't speak to that because I only took 2 tests. I didn't take any of those ones that were like consortium tests.
Oh, yeah.
I only took 2 department tests.
Right. So what Tom's talking about is there are some places, like here in Colorado, where a bunch of smaller departments will all pull from the same pool. So you'll go to one test that'll have 10 departments that might pick from that list. Or you'll go to cities that are just taking that one test for that one town. And yeah, you keep taking these tests and hoping and getting interviews. And I remember, do you remember your first interview?
Yeah, I only had 2. So I for sure.
Yeah.
I remember both of them.
How'd they go? I mean, obviously one went well.
The first one, I don't know how many people were testing there. It was 400 or 500 people. And they interviewed the top 100. I made that. And then out of the interviews, they had 20. I made that. But then there was a hiring freeze. And then the second one, I don't know how many people were there taking the test because I think there was multiple days. I don't even remember taking that. I remember taking the first written test. I don't remember taking the second one. But it did well. I want to say I was like, they ranked after the written, I believe. And I was like 10th, so I got an interview. I don't know how many they interviewed. They probably interviewed like 100 again.
Yeah.
And then I moved to 3 after the interview and got the job offer. And then they booted 2 people out, and so then I end up being the number 1 going in.
Well, that's another great reason to have life experience is the interview. You know, like going into an interview and they're like, hey, tell us a time when you've had to exhibit leadership.
Yeah.
You're
I
like,
mean,
oh,
you have stuff to pull on,
yeah.
but the reason I still say the number 1 reason I crushed the interview both times was because, like, I went to firehouses, you know, did the ride-alongs, and then I did the uncomfortable of like, hey, I've got these interviews coming up. Will you guys do like a mock oral board for me? Super uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that, and I remember that first one in the station. They asked me questions, and I fucked every word, you know. And they're like, "Yeah, you
did
don't
terrible. Yeah, don't do that.
Right? Like you gotta organize. You know, you don't have any thought process of what you want to say, and you're kind of rambling.
Yeah.
And so then I, you know, search the web for questions, all that stuff. And then I would have my wife actually interview me one time, which is uncomfortable too.
Yeah.
And then I would just set the camera up in my living room in my apartment, and I would ask myself the question, and I'd set the paper down, I'd look at the camera, and then I'd answer it. Uncomfortable again, right? Like I never,
Right.
you know. And
then you're like, man, my
you got to
face
go
looks
back
like
and
that?
watch it.
Yeah.
You know. So then you start looking. Oh, my hands are moving too much. My mannerisms, like I'm not making enough eye contact. That type of stuff. But it helps. I mean, it's super uncomfortable, and I think that's what I tell everybody they need to do. And then you start to figure out that all the questions are the same.
Yeah.
You just got to get back. You know, what's the root of this question? What story can I tell
Right.
that separates me? Because I mean, that's probably the biggest thing of the hiring process, right? Is like, I mean, I think you can find practice tests and get yourself to a point where you can get to an oral board, but it's how do I like crush it?
We've had some people reach out. We've helped do some like mock interviews. Those guys have gotten the jobs, and we've seen the progression from each practice to the next, and it just gets so much easier.
Yeah,
People,
I mean, it's reps.
Polished.
Yeah, I mean, you're polishing your yourself.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you pursue any certs prior to getting hired? Do you think that's important?
Hazmat tech.
Wow,
That's
congratulations.
No, don't do that. I don't like hazmat.
No, did you go and take fire
I
class?
had my, yeah. So I didn't really know what to do. I just immersed myself. So like I'm in my senior year of college, and I'm finishing bachelor's degree, but I'm like, I want to do fire. So I dual enrolled at the community college. So I'm like taking like 24 credits. Like I'm ready.
Dang.
Yeah. So I'm finishing the bachelor's, and then I'm taking like, they had this combat challenge one. So it's like, all right, do that.
That sounds fun.
They had, what else did they have? I mean, I was doing EMT. That was the big thing, right? So I got my basic EMT. That was probably like a 9-credit class. And I just remember taking a couple other ones that just got me familiar with the fire service.
Yeah.
Also created relationships, right? Because who's teaching fire service classes?
Yeah.
Firefighters from around the area. So you get to know them.
You find out about tests.
Yeah. I mean, and you're not going to be surrounded by the best of the best in those classes.
Sometime it depends on your classes.
Well, not more times than not.
But yeah.
I mean, what about your EMT class? Everybody tells a story. I mean, like everybody tells a story about being in like basic class, and you look left and you look right, and you're like, "What?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, I was
in the right room?
I was expecting to be like in a room full of, people who wanted
Like
to be
just
elite.
like I'm gonna have to, run to keep up.
Yeah, and then you should have some guy on your first day at EMT class, and he's got his shears like in his EMS pants.
Dude, at any point, there can be an emergency or if someone's clothes need to be cut
shears.
off. It can happen at any time.
Oh, it's awesome.
Same thing with a flashlight.
Oh, you got to have a
At any
flashlight.
point, the lights could go out.
Yep. Make sure you got that tourniquet. And,
I mean, you might have to clear a house as a EMT.
oh God. So I took every class I could when I found out that So in Illinois, it was a little different because you had to have your paramedic if you wanted to get hired somewhere. So you had to do all that stuff on your own. And then we had a like regional training center pretty close to us, and they had everything, any class you wanted to take. And so as long as you were affiliated with a fire department, you can go take those classes. So yeah, I was just like, I saw the list of classes that you could take, and I'm like, oh man, that looks awesome. I'm gonna go do that. Or it's how I assume people who like really loved school saw college. You know, like, hey, I love this class. This looks interesting. I'm gonna take that. So then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go get my dive certification, and then I got into the tech rescue stuff and just took absolutely everything. And then I'd go into these interviews, and I had this, you know, like we call it the Book of Wow. Like I had this thick binder full of certifications, and I thought that was going to be like, how could they not hire me?
Look
right?
at all this.
Yeah,
look, keep flipping.
Yeah, look at all these pieces of paper.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And they're like, yeah, put it in the stack with everybody else who has all
whatever.
the same stuff.
Guess what? We're gonna put you through our own.
Well, it was like I didn't understand the certified versus qualified thing, and you know, like yeah, I had all these certs, but like I never.
Yeah, I mean, I think all that does for you is at least give you some credibility with maybe a.
Well, it shows investment.
Okay, like this guy, like he's obviously trying to
Right.
to invest in the career.
Right. So I think it's super important to take those classes, but whatever interests you, you know, like don't go take classes that, you know, some guy sitting next to you at the test was like, yeah, I took this one. And you're like, well, this kind of sounds boring to me. I think it's find what you think is interesting.
Well, let's go back.
Start taking those.
Let's go back. The first question you should ask yourself before you go after a department is, well, and maybe you can say yes to both.
Uniform policy.
Do I want to be a firefighter primarily, or do I want to be a paramedic primarily?
Right.
Because, and then there's some place where you can be both. Really, I mean, we work at a place where you could be both.
Yeah.
I mean, but there are some fire departments that, I mean, it's like all medical, and you might go there and you'll never train on fire. It's just kind of like an afterthought.
Right.
You know, so if you think that you're really interested in the fire side, you take like an academy through the community college and you burn a little bit and you're like, this is awesome. And then you go to EMT school and you're like, I don't know.
This ain't for me.
Yeah, like I'm not in for, wiping asses and cleaning up vomit. Then you might want to think about like, I really want to find a place that they focus on firefighting, and there's not many of those places,
right?
Just because of the type of service we deliver now. But that's an important question. I mean, I think we're fortunate where we work that we do see quite a bit of fire,
More than most.
Yeah. So that helps.
Yeah.
And that helps with experience, and that helps with becoming better at the job, just having more games to go to.
Yeah, I mean, with that comes though the places that you might have to live. If all that's all you want to do, right? God, I think it was East St. Louis. 50% of their call volume is a structure fire. So,
well, I mean, take the extreme of and I'm sure they're still this way, but I mean, how bad Detroit was,
right?
5-8 years ago. Now you're going to a ton of fire, like 8 to 10 a shift.
Yeah.
And now you're kind of getting burned out because you're going on vacant structure fires. You're just like, all right, another one. That's what a few guys said. I mean, kind of like you'd get when you're 20 calls deep on medicals a shift. You're like, another one?
Yeah. Even if you like it, but it's just the volume can wear.
Yeah, 100%.
Did you look into retirement and all that? Like, hey, what kind of benefits does this department have?
No, not specifically. I didn't
either.
I looked. I just knew that I knew about the defined benefit.
Yeah.
And knew that that was a great option. That's one of those great perks of the job. But then even then you get in and you're like, just like everything else, like if you are really disciplined in that part of your life too, financially, or I mean, that might not be the best option for you.
Right.
You know, we had a place where like before we switched over to defined benefit, we were more or less like a.
Can you say what defined, like what that is?
Well, so you after you put in a certain number of years and you reach a certain age, you get a percentage of your salary for the rest of your life. That's the simplest way to put it.
Yeah.
So, one thing that we had when I first came on at my department was more of, they call it money purchase plan. It's just basically what you put in, you get out. It's like
a 401k.
Yeah. And we were actually talking about that last shift, and it's like, man, if I knew what I knew now,
You would have stayed
I
with.
probably would have.
Yeah.
Like I probably would have, because
You're responsible.
yeah, and I think like you can only collect on your defined benefit retirement at a certain age, right?
Yeah.
Well, that changes when it's like your 401k, and you can direct it a little more, and it's just interesting, right? You just don't know what you don't know, or you make the best decision with the information you have then.
Yeah.
But that can change too.
How would you prep for an academy if you had to go back? Or how would you, like, hey, I start academy in a month? Like, what kind of advice would you give to somebody?
When I used to run academies, and like we'd meet with the recruits like 3 or 4 weeks before, or we'd send an email out or something. I used to say, don't read a book. Don't. Everything you need to know that's book wise, you're going to get in the academy. Like, don't read any other books. Like, we're going to give you a book. You're going to get tested on it. You need to study. You need to do that all part in the academy. But you got to come in shape. Like, that's how you prepare for an academy. Like, you want to pass a test, and you're studying for stuff, but you're tired all the time. You're hurt. Like, you can't sleep because you're out of shape. Everything. Like, you're stressed because of the next day of how you're going to get crushed physically. Like, but that's controllable. Like, why should you even have to worry about that? If you come in shape, it's just time you're putting in, and you don't have to worry about the physical part of it.
Right.
Because you're going to have to learn skills in your gear and all that. And like, just to have to worry about like how miserable you feel and how out of breath you are and, out of shape you are. That's not a recipe for like passing an academy.
Right.
So, I mean, guys struggled academically, but the ones who struggled academically and made it were the ones that were in really good shape, because then they could really focus on that.
Yeah, the academy is not going to get you in. Like, it's not going to. That's not the time to get in shape, right? If it's like,
well, if you want it, it can be your personal trainer, but you're going to piss a lot of people off, mainly the staff and your other recruits.
Drag everyone down.
Yeah, because you're the load.
Yeah. Yeah, coming in shape, I think prepping for the heat as much as you can. So if you've never been in bunker gear before, if you could get your hands on something that could help you with that heat trapping.
So you could like, usually some of like if you do some ride-alongs, you ask like firemen if you can like borrow like an old set of gear or something like that. A lot of times at community college, if you do that, then you can get in it.
Yeah. But I think that was a big shock, at least for me. We had some guys. So there were this department. I went to my first fire academy in 2006, I think. And there was a department that you were a cop for a few months, and then you were a firefighter for a few months. Then you just go kind of back and forth. But these dudes did not want to be firefighters, like not at all,
be
right?
Like us, like train us to be cops. We'd be like,
exactly, 100% the same. And they would take their liners out of their gear. So fire gear.
So they're combat challenge, Lee and Paco.
That's right.
Sorry, Lee. Sorry, Lee. He doesn't do that, but we always know.
But you in the fire gear, you have like a thicker liner that traps a lot of the heat, and then the outside is basically just like a thin canvas is the easiest way to describe it. But it's very like really light, and so they would take their liners out because it was in the summer.
Yeah,
and the cadre found out,
Oh,
and
dumb move.
we got trashed.
I bet you did.
It was bad news bears. But yeah, I think that is a big shock for people of how uncomfortable that increased internal core temp is. So if you can find a way to experience that a little bit, I think that's helpful.
How would you handle? You're an instructor, and your recruits do that, where they take their liners out.
Here's what I would do. I would get everybody a pair of sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and we'd go full gear, and it would be berry time. Like, I think
I love this. I love it. I just don't think you can do it anymore.
Why not?
One guy, it doesn't matter what they did to deserve it. One guy passes out, and you put him in sweatpants.
Well, I think that's on the instructor to gauge where your people are at.
So I agree. I mean,
because
what's going to piss me off more about this situation if I'm an instructor is not the fact that, well, I mean, it'll make me mad that they took liners out, but now I, as an instructor, have to get in my sweatpants and sweatshirt and get in my gear and suffer, and I'm going to be pissed.
Which is going to make it a very memorable experience for everybody.
True.
You know?
But I think you got to be more careful than you could 20 years ago, than you had to be 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think you're right. But it's also, you need to, like, I don't think that the academies that I went through, they did a good job of kind of, it was like, hey, everyone's doing this as a group. I don't care. Here's a great example. So one of the places I worked, there was a memorial probably 2 miles away from the academy grounds. And so we would, in the mornings, go run to the memorial, which was a nice, like, hey, this is how serious this job can be. And on one of our runs back, we had a gentleman who was, what are they? Firepotamus. I think that's what one of our former...
Redundant protoplasm.
Yeah. And so my man was struggling hard. And the cadre was like, if you don't keep up with these guys, like, you're going to get fired. And I don't know if that was the right move, because as we're running back, he has both his arms around 2 other people, and he falls and takes 2 guys down with him, giving one of them like a TBI. Like, he fell right on top of his head. And I'm like, what did that do? Right? It took 3 guys out of the academy for however long, and then it jacked this dude up probably for the rest of his life. He ended up leaving the fire service and all this other sort of stuff. So I don't know. I think you need to gauge where people are at, and, like, you need the goal is to get them to their 10, right? And so that's going to be different for everybody in class, right?
Here's the way I looked at it. This is not, and we are not your personal trainers, right? And this is not a personal training class.
Right.
So as much as that situation came up, I've seen it, we had it, you know, got to a point, I'd say, you know, a year after doing it, it's like, no, like, it's not our job to get you in shape. If you're out of shape and it's detrimental to your job, you're gone.
Right.
You know, try again in a year when you've prepared more, you know.
Right.
And I think that's the solution. It's because then you don't take out another couple guys with it. And really, like, I get the whole team building aspect, and I mean, you have to, that's the other thing too, is like, if you are out of shape, you have to be so good at the other stuff that instructors will almost give you a pass and go, okay, well, he'll be there in like 8 to 10 weeks.
Right.
But we like everything else about him.
Attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That they'll put up with that.
Right.
But if you lack, and more times than not, if you lack the discipline to come in shape, you probably lack discipline in other areas of your life, and you're going to have problems everywhere. And so, like, people aren't. I don't want to put up with that.
Right.
You know, give me a guy who will. You know.
Yeah. What would you say? And I know we've talked about this on other episodes, but when did you know it was time to promote?
I mean, I from the time that I entered the academy, like I knew I wanted to promote, and I think what changes or what influences that is just how your career goes. So, my first couple promotions, 2 or 3 promotions, exactly how I planned it, and then other things happened, and I kind of slowed the roll on that.
Yeah.
So, man, I mean, it's like I just never had have the conversation with myself that I hear a lot of other people of like, I'm not ready for this, or I'm not ready for that, or I don't want to. I need more experience in the backseat, which is all valid. But I just had my sights set on being an officer very early on.
Is that because you held like a leadership role with baseball? Like, how did you, or you just kind of like,
I mean,
you didn't fit in the backseat?
yeah, like I was captain of my high school and college teams, but that's like, I mean, I think that's more like of a symbolic
Role.
label for someone who is just like showing the way.
Right.
It's not all the same as like, a leader in the fire service. There's way more to that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's part of it, I guess.
I never wanted to be an officer.
Until you worked with me and you're like, fuck
And I
this
got to
guy.
get out of here.
Yeah.
No, so I found this graph, and I'll put it up for those of you watching on Spotify. On one axis is your skill level, and on the other one is basically the challenges that you're facing, right? So if you have low skill and high challenge, you're stressed, right? If you have low skill and low challenge, you're apathetic, okay? As you start to get more skill and low challenge, you're really relaxed, right? Almost bored. And where you want to be, where I want to be, is I want to have high skill and high challenge, right? That's when we get into that flow state.
I like that low skill, high challenge, anxiety. That totally makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Super nervous.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so you want to, I don't want to say that I wasn't challenged anymore, because that's not accurate. Like, I still was learning, but I felt like I was fighting for getting like 1% better. I felt like I was super confident in my spot, my position. So the way our department runs is that if you're on a truck, depending on what seat you're in, you have a very specific job that you're doing on every fire. And so I was getting to the point where I didn't have those nerves anymore. I was still loved doing that stuff, but on the way to calls, I didn't have those like butterflies, and I just kind of got bored a little bit. And it wasn't like, man, all these guys suck that are getting promoted and I don't want to work for them. Like, that wasn't it. It was just, I felt like I wasn't progressing anymore in life.
Stagnant.
Yeah, I was stagnant.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm out of the back seat, it's like I left that.
It's a whole new set of challenges.
Oh my
I can remember
gosh.
going from the back seat to being promoted, and then I didn't have plans to go out to the academy, but then that happened right away, just the way things were.
Yeah.
Ooh, I mean, I felt like you used the word invigorated the other day. Like, I felt invigorated because it was like new, it was challenging.
Yeah.
Like, I was learning a lot about myself. I had a lot to prove because super young, and now you're trying to show everybody on the department that you fucking know what you're doing to an extent,
Right.
whether it's teaching guys who are already on, or not necessarily teaching, but just putting a curriculum together for trainings. And then, hey, now you're running academies. What's the product that's coming out?
Right.
That's
Because that's a reflection of you.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing about instructors that I don't think they take into account. The way I looked at it, and I use this analogy, I mean, by no means are recruits in the academy like are kids, but I have kids, you have kids. What they do in the real world is a huge reflection, right? So, we've run on those people that their parents are around or something, or they live in the same house, and the son, daughter, whatever, is a complete idiot, right? They're 30s, they're living
failure to launch.
Yeah, and what do you do? I mean, you look at those people and go, "Come on!" But then if the parents are around, you're like, "What has happened? What went wrong?" It's a bad reflection of parenting, right?
Right.
So I looked at it that way with new guys coming out of the academy. It's like, well, that's a reflection of me and everybody else here, the staff. I mean, you want people to come back to you that are online like, yeah, this group is good.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing I'm feeling right now as a brand new officer is people are really trying to feel you out and see what they can get away with. Like they want to see.
But they do know. They know. They do know what you. So one of the guys that I worked with for a long time before I promoted, I was like, man, I don't know if I can work with this type of person and this type of person, because I really believe in
these values.
Yeah, and a lot of those values are centered on the same thing we talk about coming to the academy. It's being like physically ready, like having the discipline, like showing up prepared, right?
Right.
And he said, you don't have to worry about that. Like, if your reputation precedes you, like guys don't want to come work for you that aren't like that. And he was right.
Yeah.
He was right. So I think like that same thing is going to happen with you. Is you don't have to worry about that. You can't fix the whole department to be like that discipline and that in shape. Like it's just what the fire service numbers are, what they are for like obesity and all that stuff. So, but they aren't going to come work for you, And I don't know if that's a cop out, but it's the truth.
I kind of hope they do. Like I hope that people who that are sick and tired of being sick and tired would they try and find.
Yeah, I mean, if they knew you,
if
they knew you, like any officer, if they get to know, they probably would, but that they're not going to have the time,
right?
For the chance. So like, you're not going to get those people.
Yeah,
I'll put money on it.
Yeah, I don't know when. It's the same thing of like, when do you know when to leave your department? I think it's like, when you know. And if all that I can say is that if you do decide to make that jump, know what you're giving up, right? Like have an understanding of what that new role is going to be for you. So if you have an opportunity to act in that prior to taking the test, I think that's pretty important. And then take it as seriously as you took getting into the fire service in the first place, right?
When you promote.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean,
take the classes, right? Go out and, shadow other officers and, hey, I really like the way that this person does this little thing. I'm going to take that from them.
Just sell yourself to the process. Like,
ooh,
see the people that do it over and over again. Like you waste so much of your life when you don't buy in like 100%. Yeah. I mean, it sucks. You remember it. I remember it. I remember both my testing process. Huge strain on the family, huge commitment, but you do it one time.
Yeah.
Like sell yourself to the process, like ace the test. I mean, I must have read the book 6 times through.
Yeah. Don't go for number 2. Like
I think it was number 2 twice. It was.
But you weren't like you were going for that number.
No,
1.
but I mean, like I of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was number 2 twice, but like I crushed those processes. I left no doubt, and I didn't have to take it again.
Yeah.
Like that's some guys get deterred. It's the same thing with getting hired. Like, do you think, knowing what you know now, that you were doing the right things preparing for, your initial like testing and interview?
Was I doing the right things to get on the
Yeah,
fire?
because I mean, like I was taking time tests. just practical application tests like those. I was going to the bookstore at the time, and I just sit there, and you don't even have to buy the book. Just go there, sit down at a table, and take the test.
I was not doing that. I did not. I did not have the.
Were you getting to the interviews?
I was getting to the interviews,
good.
but then I was shitting the bed on the interviews because I wasn't putting the work in.
Right. And so then you're wasting more of your time,
Yeah.
more of your life, and it's getting more frustrating. It's like, and I think some guys waste that time. They don't know. They don't know how to prepare.
Same. I had no idea, and I'd get all these rejection letters, and I'd pin them up on my wall as like a reminder, basically, of like, this is going to be part of your story. But I wasn't. I was just going to more interviews, and I was answering them the same way that I didn't take the time to. I didn't invest the time like I did for promotional, for sure.
And you knew then, like you knew.
Yeah, it just took time. It took
to figure out like this is how we do it.